and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, we are diving into a topic that honestly I have had kind of, I guess I would say, like a little bit of a love-hate with. And the main reason being is because I feel like it's been something I've been trying to figure out how to master since the first day of starting my business, only to really realize that it's not really a one set model and it very much has a million different ways that it can be done. There really isn't a right or wrong. And so I think in trying to master it the perfect way, I very quickly realized that there isn't a perfect way, but I have learned a lot along the way. And with that being said, I want to dive into a little bit of this big thing that everyone loves to ask about, which is work-life balance. Obviously, in building my business very quickly and scaling it to multiple seven figures, hitting seven figures in 18 months was a big thing. And I often, even now with a lot of the things that I do, will have people ask me and say, well, how do you achieve balance? Like, how do you do everything? And I really want to, well, first preface a couple different things today. I think first, the thing that I would want to know more than anything is that I'm going to talk about some of my learnings today, some different principles, practices that I have that I do think are a big part of what allow me to balance my life and my business. But I also will say that I think this is very individual to the person, which is why I want to focus a lot instead of just like tactics of like, this is what you're going to do to your calendar this week. We're going to have those. We're going to be going through some of the exact tactics of things that I literally myself have done, delegated, etc. But I also think that there's a conversation that needs to happen here of like the principles that will help you to discover your tactics. And so I kind of want to be a little bit of half of that for you today. So let's get into it. I literally was like sitting here being like, I need a list because I just have so much that I've learned, so much that I don't do anymore. And I was like, how do I want to basically make sure that I get all of these nuggets to you? And as I said, going into today, the goal for me is not to have you be like, I want to build Kate's schedule. I want to operate my business the exact same way as Kate. That's not the point of today. The point of today is for you to learn principles and realize that my schedule may not look like your schedule, but understanding the principles will help you to build that perfect kind of like CEO schedule for yourself. This is actually one of the practices I will say that we do with our clients. So when someone comes and they join with us, we look at like, how are you using your time? How are you basically doing everything that you're doing right now? And how can we optimize that for the next stage of where it is that you want to go? So this is actually something that I do with clients, with people in my world, is actually go through an exercise to build all of these different structures for them. Because the reality is like the whole idea of like work smarter, not harder, all these mottos are centered from really how do we do more with the same amount of time? And I think initially, one thing I will say is that I do think it's important to recognize as me, as like a non-married, no children individual, my life may look different than yours. And so I don't want you potentially as someone who does have 1, 2, 4 children to say, oh, well, that must be nice. I can't do that because I have kids, right? That's the goal of today, as I said, is not about you creating my schedule. But I literally coach women who have a baby on the way in 6 months. I've got also people who have 4 children and I help them build a schedule. I've got people who work 10-hour days and I've also got clients who have 2 and 3-hour days. So the reason that this is effective is because it is individual, because it is custom, because it is something that should be considerate of the stage of your life. And I often will tell my clients, listen, the way that I work right now is definitely not going to be the way that I work when I have children. And I hope one day to be a mom. If you guys have listened to our other episodes, you know that like I definitely would love to like basically have a small baseball team and have like 4 children one day. I'm from a family of 4 and it's always been like kind of like my goal and dream to have a big family. And so for me, I know for a fact that what I do right now is not going to be how I operate when I have a family. But that's, I think, the whole purpose of today is recognizing that your schedule should look different and may look different at different stages of your life, and that is warranted. And with that, I want to teach you some principles that allow you the flexibility and the fluidity to allow that to change as you go through these different stages. So first thing that I want to say is I think kind of even to the note of the title of today's episode of like really going into work-life balance, first we need to have this conversation of like, what is balance? What does balance even mean? What does that even look like? And in my opinion, balance is really just a byproduct of what you value. And what I mean by that is some people really value, let's just say, going to the gym. So having that going to the gym hour in their day is essential because that's what they value. If you value spending time with family and you're like, family is the number one for me. And I have many clients that feel that way. Many moms I work with are like, family is number one of my business every single day. I'm like, amazing. If that's the case, then you should be building your business around family, which means that you should have sufficient time to see family, spend time with family, intentional time with family, or maybe your kid has soccer practice or hockey practice or dance recital, and you're like, that is really important for me to be there. Then great, let's work that into the structure of how you build your business. And so to me, your balance, your perfect schedule, your reality is a byproduct of what you value. And so I very much do believe on value-based decision making, which means that one person's schedule may not look like something you want. And that's because what they're doing may be something you don't value. And your schedule may look different than theirs. And they don't want it because they don't value what you value. Base your balance off what you value. And so this is why I don't believe in this like one template structure, because what I value in this stage of my life is not the same as I'm going to likely value in the next 10 years. And so I want you to think about looking and balancing your calendar, your structure of your week off of your values. So for me, what this means is I basically look at my calendar, and if at a snapshot, I try to put as much in my calendar to give me this visual representation as I can. But when I look at my schedule, I literally will see, okay, how much of what I value is in here? So like how much of my health time is in here? How much of my family or friends time is in here? Is there like a date night in there? Is there time for sleep adequate in there? Like the things that you care about. If I was to take a snapshot of your calendar, I heard this quote, I'm going to mess up the quote for sure, but basically it was saying, if I saw your schedule, if I saw what you do, what would I assume that you value? And I think that that was really like for me, the easiest snapshot of really at any moment knowing quote unquote success for me at a given moment, which was right now. If I asked you and I looked at your schedule and I saw what you did literally every day, Monday to Friday for the last week or so, what would I see? And if you couldn't give me context, what would I assume your values are? So do you have time in there? Is it all work? Is there no work? Is there all lots of family time, no family time? Your schedule, like basically, if I watched your day to day life, I should be able to see what it is that you care about. And so if I can't see that, gives us an opportunity to kind of readjust and quote unquote rebalance, right? So I will say, again, your seasons are going to look different and therefore your values will change, right? So my value right now in my business is very much a lot about my business because I have the ability to be selfish right now. When I have kids, I'm not going to have as much ability to be selfish because I have other people that I'm responsible for, right? So for me, my values right now are very much about business, but eventually when I have a family, will definitely tip more toward family than they will business. And for me, values I consider are things like health, relationships. Like I think almost about a wheel of life in a way. And I look at my schedule every week and I say, how much of each of the pieces of the wheel of life have I taken care of? How I feel about my personal development, my mindset, my health, my physical health, my mental health, my career. Do I feel like relationships, all those pieces are being taken care of in a given week? And if I feel like there's balance amongst the wheel, in my opinion, then I do feel like, okay, like I've done my job. But with that being said, I think there's also this conversation of, again, back to that word, balance looks different for everybody. So I am inside of this mastermind. And I actually had one of my peers who said, I have a love hate with balance. And I said, why? He goes, I prefer to use the word harmony. And ever since I heard him say that, it just like clicked for me because I realized that I very much resonate with the word harmony much more than I do balance. And that is because I think about it, as soon as he said that, I had this like visual representation of like orchestra. And I want you to think about if everything's perfectly balanced, like equilibrium across everything. Think about you've got trumpets, trombones, saxophones, like everything is just all playing the same perfect note at the same time. The sound is not necessarily something you would want to hear. When you're listening to an orchestra, you're listening to highs of saxophones and the lows of the flutes and the highs of the clarinets and the lows of the bass drum, right? And that's what makes such a beautiful sound. And so for me, when I look at my schedule, I think of harmony. I think about the orchestra and playing that beautiful note that has the highs and the lows and all of these different sounds and areas. And I look at my life the same way. Some things are going to be very high and some things are going to be very low. But when I balance it all out, or when I have harmony of all of those things, it's beautiful. And so for me, I recognize as well that with this word of like work-life balance, I think everyone has the visual representation of like literally it being perfectly equal and flat. I just don't think that's how life is. Like life is a roller coaster. Some weeks are crazy and other weeks are perfectly structured. And so I think by instead using the word harmony, work-life balance is the terminology that everybody knows. But I do think harmony is definitely a much more supportive, I would say, terminology that really asks us, okay, let's evaluate our schedule and see in front of us here. Do I feel like this is in harmony? Again, back to what you value. Do I feel like there's harmony amongst all the things that I care about? So I do think for me personally, since hearing that, I very much have tried to substitute work-life balance with work-life harmony. Do I feel like I have harmony between work and life? So kind of going back to this harmony now and knowing, okay, what are my values? What do I care about? Second, is that in my schedule? Do I feel like there's harmony amongst that? And for me, I think even in business, like I believe that people, you prioritize what you value, right? So if someone says, I'm going to watch Netflix instead of working on my business. I'm like, well, then in that moment, you have to realize that you just simply prioritize Netflix more than your business. So again, if that's your value because the Netflix is resting time, then sure. But you have to look at if you are somebody who wants to have a life that is truly filled with the things that you value. Think about that ultimate you. Think about that future you that you want to be. Think about what they care about. Think about what they value. Think about what they spend their time on, their money on. Think about that future you and what they care about. Now ask yourself, is that in your schedule? Is that in your calendar? Is that how you operate your time? And if it's not, you have an opportunity to realign. And you have an opportunity to say, great, well, if I'm not prioritizing the things that I value, like for me, I'll be really transparent with you. For me, this has always been health. Like I am pretty great with sleep, pretty good with dedicating some time for friends and family every week. Like I have a lot, I would say, of like, generally speaking, a good amount of balance or harmony. But the one thing that I've really struggled with is health and like going to the gym, because for me, if I'm going to be honest, stemming it down to what we've talked about, I don't think I valued health enough, which is why I never prioritized it. And so if you guys watch our burnout episode, you'll hear all about this. But what the reason I basically hit the peak of burnout, in my opinion, was because I wasn't prioritizing what I should have at that point valued for where I wanted to go. And so once I got clear on my values, I started to ask myself, okay, how am I prioritizing this? Because when you prioritize, you're also going to then have that in your actual schedule, right? So if I'm prioritizing sleep, if I'm prioritizing a date night, if I'm prioritizing like hanging out with family, whatever it may be, what I'm doing is I'm having that now as a priority in my calendar. By having it as a priority in your calendar, you are now also putting yourself into a rhythm and routine. This is something that I think is essential for harmony in a week to week of your life. You need to have routines that you can fall back on and habits that you can fall back on, because we are a byproduct of our habits, period. When you are stressed, when you are overwhelmed, when you're feeling it from all sides, you go back to your habits. You go back to what you know, what you've always done. Why? Because it literally is just your subconscious takes over. It's too much effort to have to make all these small decisions. And instead, your brain goes into autopilot of whatever you've trained it to do. So for me, I now look at, okay, well, what are the rhythms and routines? I travel. I have weeks that are crazy and all over the place, but I still have a couple core principles, beliefs, habits, behaviors that I lean on that basically allow me to maintain rhythm. So it might sound silly, but like one of the ones that I do is sleep. Like I have kind of like a pre-sleep routine that I do regardless of whether I'm traveling or I'm home. I have this spray that I put on my pillow every time. Even if I'm traveling, it's like lavender spray that I got off of Amazon. And I spray it on my pillow, and I have a heating pad that I travel with that I basically heat that up and I spray the pillow, and I shower every night before bed and have a really hot shower. Not to get into the science of all of it, but like your internal system when you go to sleep tries to cool down. So I either have a hot bath or a hot shower every single night kind of thing before bed usually. So it's like this routine, this rhythm of how I want to cue my body, it's time to go to bed. And so I set usually alarms to try to go to bed around the same time, try to wake up around the same time, and it gets your body into a rhythm and routine. Why? Because I know for myself, when I'm in the peak of stress or busyness, my body is going to fall back on that. My, system is going to rely on those habits that I've created. So I basically have created these routines and habits that allow me to, when I get really stressed or, to be honest, have lots going on in my life or in my business, that I fall back on those. And the habits that I fall back on are ones that I want to have, not something that doesn't serve me and my ultimate goal. So a question that I would want you to ask yourself right now is, what are your habits and routines? What are the things that you fall back on? My old habit, to be honest, when I used to be stressed or when I used to be kind of like overwhelmed, my previous habit used to be to sit and basically binge Netflix and eat chocolate, which again, it's not that I don't do those things ever anymore. I still watch Netflix, I still eat chocolate. But to me, I've created routines like meditation, breath work, cold therapy that basically become part of my routine to help me to recharge. So again, recognizing we go back to our habits anytime that we're feeling stressed. So ask yourself, what are yours and what are ones that you feel are serving you, but also what are some things you need to change, and creating time for that within your life. Now, another thing that I've done that I truly feel like this has changed the game in my business, something I talk about, is deep work days. So I have basically these days where I put basically all of my notifications on airplane mode and I just go into work. And so there's no client communication during those hours, more or less no team communication during those hours. And so for me, I originally had Monday and Friday where I would just do these deep work. So I would have like a solid day that was just always dedicated to development of the business. So you'll often hear me talk about work on the business versus in the business. I would have days where I would just dedicate to working on the business. Since then, having a team, having obviously bigger client load as well, been challenged to kind of be like, okay, well, how do I want to create this schedule? As the demand of the business grew, basically, I had to really assess, how do I want to run this business? So this is my structure, and I'll tell you a little bit about why I structured it this way. I am somebody who finds that when I'm in something, I want to be in it. Like I want to go all in or I want to go all out. And so when I would do like content and then deep work development and then client calls and be in all the areas of the business in a given week, I found it very difficult to switch between all those tasks. And that's just for me personally. I found it very difficult to switch between all of those because I was like, when I'm in client communication, I was kind of in like Coach Kate mode. But then when I had to go to content, I was then in marketing Kate mode. And then when I had to go to team, I was in like leadership management. And again, like you should be able to switch between all those tasks. It's not that I don't have to do that, but I do find it slows me down when I have to do too much of all of the things in one week. So basically how I've created my schedule now is I have basically what I call A and B weeks. So I am in the business 3 days a week, every other week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every other week, I'm in the business. Basically what that means is I've structured all my calls, all my client one-on-ones, anything that has to do with client facing interaction or very heavy call focus, even potentially with teams, meetings for contractors, stuff like that. Anytime that I have that, I really try to structure those Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because those allow me in those days when I wake up, I'm like, I'm on Zoom. Like I am just like, I'm in Zoom basically all day on those days. And I'm like really in the business. Now, on the opposite week, so that's considered, let's just call that a week as in the business mainly. On the Monday and Friday of that week, I'm still doing other things. But again, it's still very much, I would say, focused on still being available, still being very accessible, I would say, to a lot of the in the business resources, contractors, teams, and clients. Now, on my B week, I have a different structure, which basically is that during that week, my only delivery expectation is like 2 hours that whole entire week. And that week is all just development. So what this means is that I basically have more than half of every single month that is like uninterrupted, deep work development, working on the business to grow and expand it. And I'm really in client interfacing 6 days out of every single month intensely. Now, obviously, I'm still accessible to my clients if they need me and stuff in between on the Slack messages, my team as well. But that's something that I also have boundaries around. For me, I don't understand why people have their notifications on all day. I do not understand it. I turn off usually my Slack during the mid hours of the day. I have a check-in point in the morning, a check-in point at night. People on my team have my cell phone number. If there's an emergency, you can contact me. And clients, I don't coach people who are 911 about their business because, in my opinion, most things in business shouldn't be a 911 if you're doing it properly. And so most things can wait a couple hours for response. And we also, for our clients, have like a 911 button they can literally press if they have an emergency, which I think has been pressed like 3 times in the total time of us having a program. So for me, I have set times even that I check into Slack. And why? Because I know that notifications are a distraction. There's something that's going to pull me away from the business and pull me away from focus. So I'm very intentional about how I structure my time. And also, realizing that like I do really well with going in the zone, like putting on noise canceling headphones, putting on some music and getting into it is the best way for me to operate. So the other thing that I would also say with notifications, I also have a timer. For me, I basically have a lock on my systems. I check into work at 10 a.m. every single morning. If I want to wake up and do work earlier, I can, but I don't set that as an expectation for myself. I check into work every single day at 10 a.m. and I'm done by 6 p.m. would be the latest, but I'm usually like 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm done work. And so for me, that's again when I'm like really deep into the business. So on those days, I'm working basically from 10 to 5, and I'm very conscious of that timeline. I literally think about it almost like you're clocking out of work. That's how I think about it, is I'm clocking in, I'm clocking out. And that again, back to routine and rhythm, really gives me that routine to know that I have set hours. Now, again, maybe for you, you don't want to have a solid block. Maybe you're like, I like to work all mornings and kind of getting up early morning, or maybe you want to do half in the morning, half at night. Again, this is just finding whatever works for you. Maybe it's certain days or certain hours, but try to find some kind of rhythm or routine for you that you kind of have this set expectation of, okay, these are the times that I perform best or show up best for my business. Now, another thing that also helps me though, in the weeks that I'm not in the client delivery, and even just thinking about, okay, I'm not in client delivery at this point, I'm not in client interfacing, but I may have a need for a meeting or something like that. The question that I often have is like, does it need a meeting? Does it need a meeting? I think we're so automatic about half an hour meeting, a 1 hour meeting, or like having meetings in general. And for me, I'm like, can this be dealt with over Slack? Can we do this over an email? Can I send you a quick voice note? Can you send me a quick Loom? Can we streamline this? Because what I've also realized, whether some people want to vocalize it or not, no one likes meetings. Most people don't like meetings, right? Like it's more time that you're there on a meeting. And our big motto within our team, when we connect, like we have very good culture, very good rapport, an incredible team behind us. No question. Everyone is like 10 out of 10. But also for us, we are very respectful of each other's time. And we also give each other autonomy within the business. Like I trust all of those women who do work within our business to do what they say they're going to do and who've got it handled. Like we have top notch, the NBA, if you will, team members on our team who can handle it. So for me, having meetings just to have meetings, the thing you also want to recognize if you have a team is like having them on that meeting is taking away from time that they can use to get their work done faster so they can go and enjoy their life, right? For them, if you want them to have work-life harmony as well, ask yourself, like, do they need to be on this meeting or can this be done via email, Slack, Loom, etc.? So I'm very conscious of not just doing things to do them. I always am kind of critiquing each week, each month, like how did we do when we scheduled our time? How did we do with the effectiveness of things? And listen, sometimes things warrant a 1 hour meeting, but I've also sometimes hopped off of meetings and thought that could have been dealt with in a much more streamlined, simple way that didn't require everybody being here. So I really want to be conscious of how I use other people's time, but also how I use my own time and can we be more productive? I have heard from people who say, well, Kate, if I don't do a meeting, I'm a little bit worried that people won't get that culture. Your culture is not built by meetings. Your culture is not created by how much time you spend together on Zoom. We have fantastic culture. We have fantastic environment between our team, and we don't spend hours and hours on Zoom together. So I do also want to reset the expectation, I guess, of if I don't do a call, if I don't get on that meeting, what's going to happen? Nothing. I can tell you it has not impacted our business at all. I think if anything, our team respects that we don't waste their time. We're always conscious of, unless we're seeing an ROI on what we're doing, we're not going to waste your time. And we'll be very conscious of not only my time, but as well your time in your schedule and in your week too. Now, another thing that I would also say that I really advise, like it's been a game changer for me, is social consumption. I don't think any of us really realize how much time we spend on social media. I really don't think that anyone truly has any freaking idea. So I saw a TikTok that came up. This is funny how I obviously discovered it. I'm like scrolling TikTok and I find this feature, which is just like the irony. But I find this feature on TikTok and I saw this video and they were talking about this feature where you can actually set an expectation of a certain amount of hours on social consumption on your phone. So anyways, I do this and I set it up and I realize my average consumption, I hate to say this. Now, listen, before you judge me, before I say this, I do a social media business, okay? I run my business on social media. So when I go on social, I could be answering DMs. I could be going on my story to show up and sell. I could be doing many things, okay? But this literally was showing that I was spending, on average, 7 hours on my phone. Hello? That's the same amount of time that like I'm asleep. It's crazy to me. It was crazy to me. And so I thought, this is not happening. So I set a timer and I now have a cap on my phone that basically, after I'm on my phone for more than 3 hours a day, it locks my device. It literally locks my TikTok, it locks my Instagram, it locks all these apps that I've pre-designated, including my internet, everything locks. And I will say, you can still unlock it if you want to, but you have to consciously go through this extra hoop now. I use that to really prevent myself from doing overconsumption for a couple different reasons. Number one, obviously, if I need to go on it for social media, for sales, or for my business operations, I will. But what I realized in this process was like, I wasn't using social only for social for my business. I was using social to basically numb myself. I was doing this as if I'm eating lunch, I was on my phone. If I was waiting in line somewhere, I was on my phone. I felt like that snapshot of how many hours I was spending was shocking to my system. And I started to realize like, I'm not using social in the way that I want to be part of my life. And listen, like I like to scroll TikTok and enjoy TikTok as much as the next person. But I also, even on that, try to cap it because again, going back to the earlier part, I don't value spending my entire day on social media because what I actually found, if I'm going to be really honest with you, is I found myself watching other people's life instead of living my own. And I was like, social media is a beautiful thing. Social media is great. You get the ability to connect with people all over the world, to see so many incredible people with their talents and their skills, putting content out online. It's so great. But for me, I'm like, I'm living through my phone and I'm not even living my real life. I'm not present. So for me, doing this helped me to get so much more time back and realize that like I could be super present in my life and also way more productive in my life if I didn't have social media constantly coming in and bombarding me. So no notifications for social media. I have a cap on how many hours I'm on it. And once I hit that cap, I have to do something that is a little bit more productive and actually like healing for me or good for me to maintain and be present in my life. Call a friend, call family, read a book, go for a walk, go do something off of your phone. And again, not that there's anything wrong with being on your phone. I don't want to like bombard social media as like this negative place. Social media is a beautiful place, but I also don't think we're using social media in a conscious way. I think we're just sometimes being like, yeah, I was just scrolling and I kind of like, you're a scroll and you just lose time and you're like, oh my God, it was 3 hours? What the hell just happened? Right? Like I would find myself losing so much time. And so I really want to be present. One of my big things in this year of values was to be super present in my life. And so I think having that timer really has been so helpful for me to really realize, okay, like now I need to go do something that is much more healing for me than scrolling TikTok at night. Okay. The other thing as well with all of this too, even kind of mentioning to the TikTok side of things is that I very much operate my life and my schedule by not only doing things that I'm quote unquote aligned to. I know that this can be a little bit ruffling of the feathers, if you will, for some people. I mean, there's a big motto around right now that basically is you only do what you're connected to. If you're not aligned with it and you don't feel like doing it, then you don't do it. And I think that's really stupid. And the reason I think that's stupid is because do you think women want to go through labor? No, but it is the most beautiful thing that happens in a woman's life sometimes. It's like the most beautiful process and it gives you this beautiful child. It doesn't mean it's not hard work. It doesn't mean it can't be something difficult, but I feel like everything that has ever been great has been a byproduct of some kind of hard work. Olympians who are the top in their field are putting in the reps. And so for me, I had to really reframe my schedule is just doing things or my life is just doing things that I want to do. Because the reality is, let's think about a world where all of us just did whatever the hell we wanted all day. No one wants to live in a world like that anyways. And I don't want to live a life that's only built around the in the moment desire that my subconscious decides to feed me. So for me, I am very conscious of the values, making decisions from values, but also recognizing that there's going to be times that I'm going to have to do things in my schedule and in my life that I don't really want to do. Someone said to me on a call the other day, they said, Kate, I just feel like you just like always wake up with energy and you always like ready to go for your business. And I was like, excuse me, there are many days that I don't want to get out of bed. I get lazy as much as the next person. I get unmotivated as much as the next person. But in those moments when it's 7 a.m. and I have to get up for something, I'm like, this was not meant to be easy. There's a reason that so many people don't achieve what they want to achieve in life. And that's because it's not easy. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple to do, but it doesn't mean it's easy. It's still hard work. It's always going to be hard work. So anything that you want is likely going to be something that requires you to put in some effort, to put in some hard work. So to me, when I have these things like an alarm clock going off and I feel like sleeping in, or going for that third coffee of the day, even though I know that's really not something that's good for me, I'm very conscious of what I want. I don't want to make a decision and live my life only off of what I want. Because the reality is that's not going to get me the life that I desire. That's not going to get me to that end target that I'm looking for. And so I'm very conscious of, while I could stay up and watch 8 more hours of Netflix, the person I want to be, the person that I want to be in my business and in my life is not somebody who's going to do that. They're going to be somebody who gets a full 8 hours of sleep, who wakes up ready to go the next morning, and who's ready to freaking kick ass at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. And so I am very conscious of always tuning into, yes, I may want to always sleep in. I may want to do whatever. And again, it's not to say that I don't do those things. Like, I do watch Netflix, I do sleep in, but the point is I'm not going to run my entire life off of my wants, because that's not going to get me to where I want to go. I run my life off of what I value. So literally I've had mornings where, no word of a lie, I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm sleeping. I'm like, I don't want to get up today. I really just wish I could just like turn this cover. And sometimes, technically in my business, I have the ability to do that. I have the ability to turn over that cover, get really nice and cozy, put on Netflix, and stay in bed all day. I could do that. But that is not going to get me to my goal. Do I have days that I purposely set aside to do that? I have days where I'm literally like, I tell people, I'm like, I'm vegetating today. I'm literally in a vegetable state. You will not be able to find me. I am staying in bed. It's part of my routine. But the point is, I'm intentional. I recognize when I need something. I recognize when I need to take care of me. I need to rest. I need to sleep in. I need a night out, whatever it is. I recognize what I need. And then I built that in with intention, but I never do it based off of an emotional response, because that is when your entire schedule and your entire routine becomes based off of just what you want, not actually what you care about and who you want to become. Another motto I live by with my schedule and with my life is, just because you could doesn't mean you should. Okay. So just because you could work an extra hour on your business tonight and you have it doesn't mean you should. Just because you could answer that client within 5 seconds of them messaging you doesn't mean you should. Just because that person is calling you to go out tonight and you're like, oh, I really don't feel like it, I feel like I need to rest. Just because you could go out doesn't mean you should go out. Just because you could does not mean you should has been a motto that has truly been like the backbone of so much and all the decisions that I have made. Because I hear people all the time like, yeah, but you don't understand, Kate, like it's messages coming in from clients at all hours. And I feel like I got to get back to people because top-notch service. And I said, just because you could reply within an hour doesn't mean you have to do that. Clients getting a response within 24 hours is perfectly appropriate as a business. So just because you could see that message and reply to it doesn't mean that you should. So just because you could work till 2 o'clock in the morning does not mean you should. So just because you could doesn't mean you should basically is a motto that helps me to be really conscious of what I say yes to. And I think one of the powers of what I've learned in creating, again, work-life balance or harmony is understanding when to say no. Recognizing I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to that function. I don't want to take that meeting. I'm not going to do these things, because just because I could doesn't mean I should. And that's because you're considering the values and the needs of the business, and you're considering the values and the needs of you. So you're going to have a lot of things as you grow and as you scale as a person and as a business that are going to be thrown your way. And it's really having that inner dialogue to be like, okay, am I going to do this? And am I doing it from a place of intention and considering the life and the person that I want to be? And if you're not, then that's a moment where you say, no. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who just, their whole life could be different if they just said no. Other people's clients are basically controlling these businesses. I feel like my clients are pulling me in all these different directions. There's a lot of client demand or team demand. I'm like, just because you could doesn't mean you should. Let's look at this from a different lens of strategy and intention here, of the life and the true business that you want to build. And if you're feeling in demand all the time, that was something that I had to remove. Like I just don't want to be on this 911 emergency energy, because that's not how I want to live my life. So again, motto is, just because you could doesn't mean you should. Now, when you are someone who's going to be a high performer and you are someone who wants to build a big business, what you have to recognize is that you are the vessel. Okay. You are the person who, we're talking about sleep, we're talking about friendships, we're talking about values, we're talking about schedule. You have to realize all of this starts and ends with you. So if you are somebody who does not consider you and the fueling of your machine in the process, it is probably the most important thing for you to get through your day. Everyone says health is wealth. Well, I couldn't agree more. When I was at the peak of burnout and I was having awful bloating, awful digestion, such bad fatigue, I couldn't operate my business. I was struggling to get through a Monday to Friday because my body was fighting me. And so for me, even I've realized again to really like be in peak performance in what I want for my business, I actually recognize that like fueling your body is very important. Being conscious of how much caffeine you're having in a day and how your body responds to that. Have you drank water today? Like the amount of people that I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to eat lunch. I'm like, you got to book in a lunch. You got to book in having time to do things like that. You have to book in being conscious of how you fueling your body. I talk to often, especially the people who want to go to multiple seven figures. I talk to you about the fact that like you are basically an Olympian in business, okay? If you want to build a seven or a multiple seven figure business, you are going to be an Olympian in business. So you got to train like an Olympian, you got to work like an Olympian, but you also got to rest like an Olympian. You need to recharge like an Olympian. And so if you want to be the Olympian in business, ask yourself, are you training and resting like one? Because for me, I said I wanted a seven figure business. I said I wanted a multiple seven figure business, but I was not resting or recovering. If you're going to train hard, you're going to work hard in your business, you got to recover hard too. So think about how you're recharging. Think about how you're restoring your body. How are you bringing yourself back to healing basically when you're pushing yourself and you're working for these big targets you're going for? So for me, it is food, it's water, it's caffeine, it's sugar, even being conscious of just like how sugar makes me feel. Does it bring me up? Does it bring me down? Listen, I like brownies as much as the next person, and I will eat all the chocolate cake. But to me, I'm just conscious of how it affects me in business. So when I do usually do those things, it's usually after I'm done my workday. So if I do have a high or a crash afterwards, I'm not having that in the middle of me trying to be productive. Now, I also will say in the busiest of days, even when you are being really conscious of how you're refueling, the other thing that I've learned so much about is the resetting of energy. Sometimes I feel like I would have like that 3 o'clock crash and I would have kind of, say like you start at like a 9 a.m. or something like that. And it would come 3 p.m. and I would just have this kind of like period of like, I felt like my energy was going. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is it. That used to be my mindset. And then I went to a conference and they were talking about the power of basically being the jolt for your own battery. And obviously recharging your battery at night with sleep and things and being conscious how you fuel your battery, but also realizing you have the ability to reset your battery midday. And so I started to really be conscious of when I feel like my battery is getting low, being conscious of what actually refills that. So again, what I do doesn't have to be what you do, but maybe for me, it would be like having a cold plunge, which is like 3 minutes. And I'm like, I'm back in action. Let's go. Or if you don't have a cold plunge, you can literally look this up and the data around it as well. Sticking your face in a bowl of ice. You'd be shocked how that will jolt your system because it literally hits your vagus nerve right between your eyes and totally jolts your system back into alertness. And things like that have really helped me a lot to basically have these little approaches or tactics that I find are really helpful for me to be able to jolt my system. Going for a walk. Do you know how many times I'm like, oh, I'm done with my day. I can't do anything else. My brain is fried. I go for a walk. I put my headphones on, get outside, move my legs, get my energy moving and literally move the state within my body. Moving and shifting energy in my body totally shifted my brain state. And so as a result, I would come back and be like, I'm ready for a second win. Let's go. Like I would have totally different energy. So if you feel like your energy is kind of like stalling, I guess I would say, be conscious of how you reset your energy. Because I think I used to just basically be like, whatever I feel is my energy. And then I realized I can change my state. I control my state. My energy is a byproduct of what I decide my energy is going to be, not necessarily just, oh, well, this is how I'm feeling in the moment. So that's that. A lot of the time it's because we're sitting at our computer, we're shrugged over, headphones on, probably tons of blue light coming through. Get out of your chair, get out of the house, get into the sunshine, go put on your shoes and go grab a coffee, go for a walk, go get out of your routine and sitting down and being on Zoom all day or whatever it is that you've been doing, right? Change your state and you'd be shocked how you're going to change your mental state as a byproduct of that. Now, another thing that I think has been helpful and a big part of a practice I've had to master, I'm still trying to always refine, is recognizing that in entrepreneurship, you're never done. And what I mean by that is like, there's never really, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I definitely have, where you feel like you leave and you're like, there's still like 85 things that I want to do. And maybe it's a new project. Maybe it's not even a 911, but there's just like more creation you want to do, more development you want to do. That is always going to be there. I feel like the joy and like the exciting part of entrepreneurship is the fact that we're such innovators, we're creators. We can like constantly, as soon as we're done with an idea, we have like another idea that we want to do. And I think that's what's beautiful about entrepreneurship is like it's pulsing through your veins probably. You're in the shower and you have an idea for a lead magnet. You're falling asleep and you're like, oh my God, I want to make a TikTok about whatever. I have a content idea. Like we have the quote unquote downloads, right? And so to me, that's a beautiful thing of entrepreneurship. However, you've got to know when to call it. You got to know when to just close the laptop, close the work. And again, for each person, this is different. Maybe for you, it's like 10 o'clock at night. And for other person, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? It doesn't matter. But to me, we have to know when to call it. We have to know when to really close things off and say, it will be there tomorrow. It's not going anywhere. And I often literally will be like, it'll be there tomorrow. And I'm getting pulled into these things. It's not even because I have to do it. This is the thing that's changed. At a certain point in my business, I was working super late because I felt like I had to. I was like, I got to, because I got to make sales, I got to market, I got to do blah, 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 blah. Now I'm at this place that I am so stable in my business. I'm so secure in my business at the stage of where we're at right now that I just get so many ideas of excitement and creation because I get to, again, innovate and create that I get excited. I almost don't want to walk away from the business, not because I have to work on it, because I want to work on it. And that shifted. Originally, it was because I had to, and I had to develop, again, that narrative of it will be there tomorrow. But also now with the new phase of just like going into innovation and creation, I also have to say, Kate, it will be there tomorrow. So I encourage you, have a motto how you end your day, like physically close your laptop and say, it will be there tomorrow. Those fires will also be there tomorrow. The development and innovation will be there tomorrow. It's not going anywhere. So everything feels emergency, but my motto, another motto that I live by, and I often will literally say out loud in these instances, other people's urgency on me is not my emergency. So if they have an emergency, that is not going to create urgency for me. I'm not doing that. So their emergency is not my urgency. So even though you may feel or see a fire and you're like, oh my God, it's 6 p.m. I'm supposed to be finished my day. This is not something I have time for, but I got to go into this now. No, you don't. Their urgency is not your emergency. So I'm always conscious of like, is this really a 911? Or are they creating whoever it is, whoever that person is that's making you feel it's urgent and emergency? Is it actually an emergency? Because if it's not, close that laptop and move on with your night. It will be there tomorrow. And it is something that's been really hard for me to integrate. But I will say, once I started to put it into practice, it was a game changer for me, my routine, and my life and my balance and harmony. Now, something else that I will say probably overarching has been a game changer in my business and in my life is delegation. So this past year, I was at a place where I was so freaking busy. My house looked like a bomb went off. There was clothes everywhere. Laundry was backed up. Cleaning, don't want to talk about it. Not okay. It was so, everything was a mess. And my business was killing it, but my personal life and my actual physical space was like not it. And so I remember saying to my mom, I called her and I was like, yeah, business was great this week, but my laundry is like literally looking like a small human in the corner. And I just feel like I've got no time. There's like dust on counters that I've never seen dust on before. Like I just felt like the personal side of my life was really piling up. And I'm going to be honest with you, I never originally even thought about outsourcing personal things in my life because I was like, I can handle it. Like I don't need somebody to help me clean. I don't need somebody to help me cook. Like I don't need anybody to do that. And so I've always delegated in my business. It's been a no-brainer. But when I had to delegate in my personal life, it was really hard for me because I'm just gonna be candid and transparent. I didn't come from a lot of money. So we didn't grow up with someone cleaning our house. We were on the floor scrubbing the floors in how I was raised. I literally was like, picture Kate with a bucket on the floor, scrubbing floors of our house. And so that was how I was raised, that you clean your house. No one else cleans your house. You cook your food. No one cooks for you. And so for me, thinking about having that part delegated, I'm going to be honest, I felt like I'm not that rich was like the first mindset that I had this past year of no, like I'm not that. To me, it was like, like having a driver, like in my mind was like I was like, I'm not that rich yet. But when I started to reframe it and I started to sit with it and I thought about, okay, I'm struggling with this area. What would I do if I was in my business? So I was like, in my business, what I would do is I would look at how much time that task is taking me. And I would look at the value of that task, i.e., if I delegated that to somebody else who wasn't me. And like, I know my cost per hour. So basically, what I've done is I look at how much my time basically works down to be per hour. And so then what I do is I look at the task, I look how much it's taking me, and I literally run a cost analysis. I look at, and obviously, as I'm saying this, you're like, what a nerd. But I'm over here and I'm literally looking at, okay, so I've got, let's just say it would take me 2 hours to clean the house each week. And then I would need 2 hours probably to cook and clean up all the dishes. And then I would probably need at least another hour to potentially 2 hours for like laundry during the week. So then I was like, I'm looking at like 6 hours here. So then at that time, I was charging about $1,000 an hour for my time. And then I was like, so really I'm losing a week, 6 hours of time. Now, it's not even to say that those hours have to be used on business, but I was like, if I had even six more hours of rest, what would that do for me in my business? If I had 6 more hours to market and sell, what would it do for my business? And so when I started to run the cost analysis the same way I would if I was hiring somebody on our team, I was like, whoa, this is 6 hours that I'm giving away if this is compounded over 4 weeks kind of thing every month, we're losing a lot of hours here. Like we really need to think about delegate. If this was my business, it would already be delegated by now. I already have an extra set of hands. So then I had to go through, well, why am I not feeling that way about my personal life? And then I realized you should delegate in your personal life the same way you delegate in your business. Your time is valuable as an operator and as a CEO in your business. And so you basically want to look at how many hours are you putting into certain things in your personal life? What is your cost per hour as a CEO or operator? And then basically run a cost analysis off of whatever it is that you're not giving away. If you were to delegate that, how much is market value for that service being done for you? And so when I started to actually literally research how much it would be to have somebody help me with food prep, how much it would be to have somebody help me with cleaning and laundry and things like that, I was like, originally just outsourcing it for 1 week because I was really overwhelmed that week and I didn't have the energy to do it. But then that week turned into a couple weeks, that turned into a month. And now I have a absolutely incredible woman who helps me at my house. And I don't reference her anything other than like, I tell her like, you're like my life manager. And what I mean by that is like, she's the reason I'm able to do what I do. She really is. Like she's somebody who helps me to do things at home the same way that people help me to do things in my business. And I could not do and show up the way I do in my business without her helping and creating this relief for me. And so for me, delegation was something that changed the game. I had this weird feeling about doing it. And as soon as I started to really process that and get over it, it changed the game for me. Delegating cleaning, delegating some support time and time with laundry, delegating things like food prep, allow me now to have a clean space when I go to rest. They allow me to have food there that helps me stay fueled while I'm working. And I tell her all the time, I'm like, I can literally do what I do because of you. Like you are the reason that I'm able to perform the way I do is because you help me so much in this area, just like other people help me in my business. So it was something that I had a little bit of a resistance to. But once I realized, like, even if it's something like another thing that I've delegated is like cutting of my lawn. Like I thought about like cutting the front lawn was like an hour or half an hour. And then the back lawn was half an hour, an hour. And then I thought about, again, like what's the cost of getting someone to do that? Like I talked to somebody a week ago. They're like, yeah, in my area, you can get someone to cut your lawn for like $30. I was like, guys, cutting your lawn, if you're somebody who has like a 7 or multiple 7-figure business, like you can delegate that now for $60, like in that area. And it depends where you live, but that area for $60. And like, if you had an extra hour to work on your business, could you make a sale for more than $60? Right? Like for me, I just really run the cost analysis. And by doing so, I've learned so much about the value of my time and the impact of where it's used. And so all of this to say, today, I really wanted to just make sure that we're having an intentional conversation about tactics and principles to live by when we're operating these businesses. I think when I first started my business, to be honest, I ran my life the way I did pre-business. And to be honest, that's not going to work for the next phase of where you want to go. If you want to build a 7-figure business, if you want to build a multiple 7-figure business, you have to realize that you have to value your time as such and create structures that support you in getting there. And so as I'm explaining things today, I also want to recognize that, again, just to reiterate, my schedule, the things that I'm talking about today, as I'm talking about them, you might be like, I don't want that. Or I feel like that's not how I would do it. Or that's not something I would delegate, but I'd want to delegate something else. This is not me telling you that this is the structure of having A and B weeks and that you have to do ice baths and all of that. No, that is not the goal of today. The goal of today is to take the principles we've talked about, to talk about being intentional of when you work on versus in the business, to talk about how you reset your energy when you're feeling your energy is low, to talk about how you take care of yourself and make time for that each week, to talk about how you spend time with friends and family or the things that you value. And is that part of your schedule right now? Like, let's have that conversation. My harmony is not going to be your harmony. And that's okay. That's the point of today, is that you're able to find a structure and a schedule that really makes sense for you. And so, the last piece that I guess I would note to that is this is the day to day. This is the week to week, the month to month. And I, similar to anybody, take vacations, right? And something I've even learned is I went to a retreat by myself. It was like this vegan inner work retreat. You like put your phone away, you eat vegan for 3 or 4 days, and you meditate, you do yoga. It was like life-changing for me. I just came back a different person, different human. And a lot of people in my life would see how hard I work and they would say, oh my God, you need a vacation. You need a vacation. You gotta take a couple weeks off. You gotta get a vacation. And if I'm being honest with you, I think, again, back to individuality of our schedules, I don't need a week. I actually am not excited just because of how I'm wired. I'm like such a go, 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 go. And this is not even in my business, by the way. Like, this is like just in my life. If I'm sitting there, I'm like, let's go to Target. I'm always like, I always want to go. I always want to be moving. And I realized this about vacation too. I realized that I am not somebody who does well sitting around doing nothing for 3 weeks. I don't know. I like to be moving. I like to be on the go and always doing things. And so what I found, the reason I share this is because I actually found that 3-week getaway was so recharging for me that day 4, I was like, I'm ready to go home. Let's fucking go. I was ready energy wise to get back in the game. And I don't need 3 weeks. So the other thing is to really be conscious of how do you recharge? How much time do you need? What do you want to recharge? How do you recharge? For me in my business, I'm not at a phase right now where I want to take 3 weeks off. I'm so excited. And I think this is the big shift that I also want to reiterate is me working in my business or you working in your business. If you're somebody who wants to work more on your business and you don't want to lay on a beach for 3 weeks, that's okay. And if you also do want to lay on a beach and work 2 hours a day, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't work in my business as much as I do because it requires me to do it. I could definitely have a smaller team. I could have smaller requirements. I could have smaller expectations of the business. But I build what I build because I literally am obsessed with it and I love it. I love it. It's like a hobby for me. People go play soccer and they play whatever. My business, I literally wake up thinking about creation. It's exciting to me. And so I think there's been this kind of conversation, right, of hustle culture. And then there's the 4-day work week and all this stuff. And listen, if I've learned anything from all of this narrative, it's do what works for you. Are you happy? Are you healthy? Do you have the things in your life that you care about day to day? And at the end of the day, when you lay your head on the pillow, are you proud of yourself for not just your business, but also what you're doing in your life? And if you are, then that to me is A+ gold star, you're good to go. So I think that also the goal of today's conversation was I definitely always get this question of what I do. So I wanted to share some of the principles and tactics that I use personally. But I also want to open up the conversation of realizing that you need to do what you need to do for you and making sure that you have a harmony and a music and a melody playing that you love to hear. Mine might be too loud and abrupt and yours may be smooth jazz. And that's the point, is that there gets to be different genres. There gets to be different harmonies of that orchestra that we're all playing with, right? So the hope today is that you'll walk away, look at your schedule, ask yourself, how can I implement this as fast as possible? How can I integrate my values more? How can I be intentional about my rest and recovery? How can I be intentional about working on versus in the business? And I will say, this is something that even if you're having these downloads, go do. Right? Go put this into action, because as you do, you will literally see not only your business, but your life totally change as a result. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. As always, stay ambitious and we'll see you guys in the next episode.